about them and fill you in all about the species, the work that Chester Zoo is doing to conserve them, and things that you can do to help as well. So you're here just in time to hear a bit more about our eastern black rhinos, and hopefully we've all spotted where they are. They're pretty easy to see. We've got 4 in here. So on the right hand side, as we're looking at the rhinos, we've got Hasina and Katani. Both of these pairings are a mum and her youngster. So this is a mum and her daughter. And then on the left hand side we've got mum Melindy, and baby is really stretching it a little bit now, isn't it? They're youngsters, maybe we should say. Baby Jamani is the youngest black rhino that we've got in the collection at the moment. He's a little boy and he is 1.5 years, whereas Hasina is 2.5. We do also have another 2.5-year-old as well. So with all the rhinos, whenever you see 2 of them together, odds are it's going to be a mum and a youngster. And that's the same over with the greater one-horned rhinos that we've got near the entrance as well. Now I'll start off with one thing, is saying about black and white rhinos. So those are the 2 rhinos that most people have heard about. Those are the African species of rhinos. So there's black rhinos and white rhinos in Africa. And as I say, these are black rhinos. But if we were to have a white rhino stood right next to a black rhino, you might be a little bit confused as to why they're called black and white rhinos, because there's really not much of a colour difference at all. I definitely wouldn't describe these guys as being black in colour. So what we actually think they've got that name from is their mouths. And some of them are showing their mouths off quite well at the moment, which is very thoughtful of them. So you might notice that black rhinos have got quite a pointed mouth, and this is because of what they feed on. So black rhinos are what we call a browser, and that means that they're going to be reaching up and eating leaves off of bushes and trees. So these guys actually have a prehensile lip, so they can twist their lip and they can use it a bit like we use fingers. That's helpful if you're needing to be dexterous to get leaves off of trees. And compare that to a white rhino. If you were to look at a white rhino's mouth, you would see that they have a very wide, flat mouth. And that's because they're a bit like a hoover, and they are nibbling on all the grasses. So they are a grazer, nibbling low down things like grasses off the ground, rather than the black rhinos being a browser. And this has led to differences in their lips. Now, what we think the name has come from is that originally the white rhino was called a wide rhino. And over the years that's got lost in translation. So then when a second rhino was discovered and described, it was, well, we've got a white rhino already, let's call this one the black rhino. So it's not to do with their colour at all, but it does make it quite easy for you to tell what type of rhino you're looking at when you look at their mouth, because wide sounds quite similar, and I tend to think of black, like beak, sounds quite similar as well, because they're black rhinos, they've got quite a beak looking face. So it's all to do with what they eat rather than what colour they are. But black and white rhinos are not the only rhinos, as I gave away a little bit before by mentioning our greater one-horned rhinos, who, by the way, if you're keen of unicorns, they are our real-life unicorns here at the zoo. Their scientific name is Rhinoceros unicornis. So you can go and see a real-life, just grey and chubby unicorn here at the zoo today. And of course they only have the one horn, which is why they're called that. And they are actually from Asia. So sometimes they get called the Indian rhinoceros. And there are 2 other species native to Asia as well. So there is the Sumatran rhino and the Javan rhino. And although we always hear about how endangered black and white rhinos are, so actually the Asian species are in even lower numbers than what we've got with the black and white rhinos. So for example, the Javan rhinos, there's only thought to be around 60 rhinos left in the wild. So we're talking really, really devastatingly low numbers. For the eastern black rhinos, which is the type of rhino we've got here, there's thought to be about 650. So really still very, very small numbers, and we're keen to do what we can to try and help them. So I'm sure you'll have heard about the main threats to rhinos is all to do with that unusual looking face and their horns. So horn has unfortunately been used in traditional medicines for around 2,000 years. So this is really embedded in culture, and that makes it something that's really hard to tackle and change. It's not something that can change very quickly. There are people that are working to tackle it at that level, but what we're looking to do instead is to try and protect the rhinos that are out on the front line instead. So we have helped to fund rangers who go out into the wild, and they help to actually protect the rhinos that are living out in the wild. They've got sniffer dogs, they've got camera traps, they've got all sorts of things in their arsenal to try and help them protect the rhinos and look out for any poachers. I should also mention as well that there is no scientific backing for using rhino horn as a medicine. So although it has been used in traditional medicines for a really long time, we scientifically can't find any reason that there's a benefit for taking it. So what it's made of is something called keratin, which is basically the same thing as your fingernails and your hair. So effectively it's no different to nibbling on your fingernails and hoping that will make you feel better. It's just not going to have any impact, but unfortunately it does have a big negative impact on the rhinos. Now, alongside the ranger programme that we've supported for more than 17 years, and that has been really, really successful. So in some of the areas that we've introduced rangers to, there's been no poaching instances since we started the project. So we've had some really good successes from that. We're also working as part of a European collaborative process with other European zoos to try and have a really healthy population of eastern black rhinos in our European zoos. And that's been so successful that last year we actually had 5 that were able to go out into the wild, which is really exciting news. And one of the things that's made us so successful at breeding them, as you can see, we've had a bit of a baby boom. We've got babies coming out of our ears, and one of the reasons for that is because of their poo. So we actually have poo scientists who work at the zoo. They would rather I called them endocrinologists. That's their fancy name. They look for the hormones that the animals have, and they look for them actually in their poo. It's much easier to get a poo sample from an animal than anything else really. They're only very happy to give that away. So by analysing the hormones, we're actually able to tell with the female rhinos when they're receptive to having a boyfriend effectively. So at certain times, if you put a boy and a girl together, they're just not going to get along, they're not going to be too happy, and we're probably going to have a fight and send the baby. So it's really imperative that we know when to put the males and females together so that we can have a positive outcome. So the poo helps us to do that. And it's also the way that we know when we've got a baby en route as well. They've got quite a long gestation period, so they're pregnant for about 15 months. So it's quite a long time that they're pregnant. So it's good that we can plan ahead because we get very big babies at the end of it. We need to make sure we've got space for them and they've got a nice soft landing when they come into the world as well. So again, we analyse the hormones in the poo, and from that we're able to tell when mum is pregnant, and we can figure out when she's due to give birth as well. So poo is a pretty remarkable thing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed hearing a little bit more about our rhinos. And if you do have any questions, please do feel free to come and pick my brains. Otherwise, our next talk today is going to be a bird feed. That will be at 1:30, and that will be in our Savo bird aviary that's just round the corner. So you can find out more about some of the African birds that we've got in our collection then, if you'd like to join me there. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.